So without further ado, I just want to get really quickly into this important conversation on Black utopias. How do you imagine Black utopias? Do you imagine them here or elsewhere?
I've been thinking through this question of what an ideal future could look like. You know, what would a future look like wherein Black, queer, and trans people got to live long enough to be elders? You know, what would a future look like where there was a Black affirming space and where Black, disabled, deaf, and mad people had what they needed to survive and thrive? You know, what would it look like in a future where Black people weren't being subjected to the violences of capitalism every day? So imagining what we don't want as a way of imagining the future. So to me, this Black utopia is less of a physical space and more of a temporal location.
My utopia is synonymous with a wellness that I haven't seen before. And so not necessarily a wellness where I'm not chronically ill anymore or anything like that, but where the pace of my body and the pace of my life is one that matches the environment in which I'm embedded.
When I think of Black utopia, I think of it in more like a global sense of the word, and because there are Black people obviously across the globe, right? And the needs and desires and the ideals of all Black people are not necessarily the same. And so to me, it's not necessarily attached to a specific location, more so that it is more of a sense of like a personal kind of sense of self and like a personal kind of like freedom and ability to be and live in your own terms without any sort of oppression, without any sort of obstacles.
The spirit of Sankofa, what can we learn from the past in thinking about this aspirational future that we're all hoping for?
You know, I think that some of these future worlds that we're trying to build are actually just a return to old ways. You know, that it's not only that we need to reinvent everything and begin anew, but we also need to remember what was working before we tried this current system that is not working. What are some of the ways that were working really well, but colonizers prevented us from practicing, you know, that we might want to bring forward into the future?
So much of accessing utopia is just allowing ourselves the time and space to remember what has already existed in order to be able to manifest what's possible or what has always been possible.
How do we think through our archives as they relate to our utopias and our futures?
It's a practice of building a personal archive of Black affect that isn't easy to find in current archives. What has been popular to document has been, you know, Black struggle, etc., in institutions of power, because that's the lens through which we're framed.
For me, the most important thing about archive is the ability to kind of see how, like, the ability to kind of be critical in a way about our past mistakes, right? Like the ability to see kind of what did work, but also what didn't work, and like what we should not bring with us in the future. If we do not have access to said archive, we're not able to know, we're not able to navigate towards the future, right? We're not able to know what worked and what didn't work for our communities and for our very specific context.
How do you think future generations will perceive your perspective artworks as we talk about archives?
I try to, with my photography, tell like an idealistic, like tell the story of kind of the ideal world that I would like for us to live in. And I would hope that kind of the feeling of the sense of kind of freedom and power that I try to depict through my images is, I would hope that this is, you know, their lives, right? Like I would hope that it's a representation of the life that they reached.
I mean, I hope that they see it as the offering that it's meant to be. I mean, in a lot of ways, my work attempts to make the revolution irresistible, as Tony Cade Bambera encouraged us all to do, but it also tries to be a bit of an archive. So I've written thousands of love letters to activists through this activist love letter project. I've drawn portraits of activists larger than life, you know, to try to create an archive of activism in this moment. You know, so I'm hoping that these works offer a record of what's happened here in this place, you know, what's happening with Black activist culture, what's happening in our world. And then the future projects that I've done that are set in the future, I hope that they don't laugh at my imaginings of what their future world will be like, but I hope that they see these as potential seed planting that maybe helped to get to where they eventually are.
I hope that future generations will feel that my work is irrelevant to their context, that they'll just be like, oh yeah, like we already know that. We don't actually need this anymore. So I'm like, yeah, we're past that. It's cute that you did that. Good for you. But actually we're just on a whole different vibration now. But that's cute. I hope that they're just living in a reality that's so vastly different from mine that yes, on a base level, they can understand what my work was or is, and at the same time that they have no use for it because they have better things.